All right, everybody, welcome into the room. I don't know what happened there. I hope I'm pushing out pretty well. I thought my stream was pretty strong, pretty good, but I'm not sure what just happened there. So hopefully that you're hearing me and we're going out pretty strong. I got my glass on today because I just have my eyes dilated and I can't see anything right now. So here we go. We have an amazing guest that's going to be on today. And if you've seen anything about on the posts I've been doing on LinkedIn, you're going to be we're just all in for a treat. And so I've always been interested in the hiring process and all of that. But first, before we get into any of it, we have to make sure that we are doing proper. So you are on Hurdlers of Adversity, Inspirers and Maximizers of Pivotal Moments. And the guests that we have are really individuals that have overcome some type of adversity, and now they're really giving back to us. They're giving back to others in this space. So you all are here in a time period where you get a chance to really see what is how we come through tough times and come through tough challenges. We have these moments in our lives, like when COVID has hit, or George Floyd, or Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, or a heated political election. All these things have kind of taken our oxygen out of our atmosphere, in our environments. And so we have to kind of inject it and infuse ourselves back with it again. And that's what we do here. We just try to really push into these spaces. So if you're on right now, we want to make sure we're recognizing who you are, what you're doing out there in the world. So just put into the chat box where you are, where you're streaming in from, and I want to see that out there. I want to make sure everybody is getting their chance, because I was looking at it right now. I was like, what is happening? I see that our live streams going forward. I see that we have our Facebook feeds going out. All the things are happening, so I'm just gonna move on forward. So what do you think? What's going on out there? Let me know. What's put that in the chat box. I want to see you all come on in the room where it happens. The room where it happens. The room where it happens. So we have some things that have been going on over last week. And if you didn't catch last week's show with Karen Millsap Allen, oh my gosh, rock star, just really crushed it on mindset. And as we get into this different conversation around today, we've been talking in kind of Black History Month with individuals of color who really are knocking out of the park, and our guest is no exception today as well. So as we are about to kind of get into this conversation, I want you to think about some of the things that have been going on in our past. So one, look at Karen Millsap Allen's show. She's pinned on my timeline. And then from there, I want you to go back and look at some of the other shows we did in the month of January, where we had a lot of Olympians that were on. We did a lot of chatting and talking around there. And then next month, of course, we're going to go into March, Women's kind of History Month, and celebrating of women. So we have a lot of entrepreneurs that are coming up in the month of March. But today we have a great guest that's going to be on. So if you haven't been on the show before, my name is John Register, and I have kind of this riches to rags to riches story timeline. So I was a world-class athlete, Olympic class hurdler, and had an injury, a fall, dislocated my left knee. I severed an artery, and then right behind my kneecap, that artery was severed. 7 days later, I had to make the difficult choice to amputate my leg. With the new normal mindset, kind of got up and started moving forward again. I don't think that the new normal is a destination, as most people use it, the terminology. The new normal, new is no prior point of reference, and normal is the everyday typical occurrence of a thought or an action. So the new normal is not the destination, it's only a plateau by which we grow. And so I used that mindset. I started swimming for physical therapy. 18 months later, I make the Paralympic swim team. And then a few short months after that, back a couple years after that, I returned to track, running track and field, and won this Paralympic silver medal in the long jump in Sydney, Australia. So that's kind of my journey storyline. And now I want to introduce you to our guests. I want to make sure that you are all out there. Sometimes when this happens, and I'm looking at the zero count up there, there are a lot of you that are actually on, and I just don't see until after the show is over with. So if you are on, please type in the chat box so let me know that you are here. All right. So he is the global recruiting strategy manager at Indeed and leads the employee lifecycle pod for the diversity, inclusion, and belonging team. And prior to his transition to his current role, he joined Indeed in 2017 as a member of the talent attraction team, where he managed recruiting teams. He has worked with multiple Fortune 500 companies and has been in the recruiting space for over 10 years. He is a proud Georgia Southern University graduate who enjoys traveling, music, sports, and is a firm believer that every day is a good day. Absolutely, 100%. So please welcome the man who says he helps people get jobs. All people, all jobs, Dane Browner. Welcome to the show, Dane. Thank you so much for being here.
John, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to chat with you today and be a part of this show that I really enjoy watching myself.
Oh, wonderful. So let's just jump into it. I love you coming on. Thank you for saying yes. I know you have some kind of rolling blackouts going on right now, and maybe we got some going on here because I don't know what's happening with my stream going forward. But people are at home and they're struggling in this new work environment. How have you seen people adapt in the recruiting space kind of over this past year?
Yeah, it's a great opening question. You know, I think it's hard for a lot of us who are now working from home, right? We work where we live where we work. And that can be tough. I'm definitely someone who looks up and I look out the window and all of a sudden it's dark outside sometimes, right? And it's 8 o'clock at night and I'm like, I've got to get away from this computer.
Right.
But when we look at it from the recruiting space, and part of the reason why I'm able to connect is there's so many of us working from home, right? There's more availability to talk to people in different environments, right? But one of the biggest things for recruiting is we've seen the opportunity for jobs to become remote, right? And it's not just be remote because I've got a dentist appointment today or because I need to drop the kids off. It's roles that can actually be remote full-time, opportunities that then lead us to where else can we go recruit? Well, just because my company is in Billings, Montana, now all of a sudden I don't have to just look at people and talent that will come to Billings, Montana. I can go to San Francisco. I can go to Atlanta. I can look at talent all over the country or even all over the world. And I think that that's a huge opportunity. And we're seeing the fruits of that labor really come to light now in a lot of really great ways.
So, that brings to another question. And in that, as you're saying, people have been talking about, the work is going overseas and the work is going. Well, we've always kind of been in this global market, or the global market is actually expanding now, and you're over, that global market there, and indeed. How is that different in going like overseas or going to a global market than it is to try to say, like you said, like in Idaho, Iowa, or someplace, I'm going to find some talent in New York, I'm going to find some talent down in New Orleans, or find some talent in Chicago and bring them into my company here in the Midwest or Mountain West area of the United States?
It's opportunity. And some of that it's about opportunity to present yourself. And it's talent that people that were in New York might not have ever thought that they'd work for someone in Billings, Montana. Whereas someone in India who is outsourcing, they're looking for that kind of work. Mm-hmm. So they're posting on forums and they're broadcasting themselves out there. They're out advocating for themselves. And what I've seen a lot of opportunities for people to advocate for themselves and to showcase the work that they can do in different ways. So I think that it's on both sides. It's employers that are now realizing, hey, I don't necessarily have to go overseas. I can, but there's a lot of talent that's open and available to doing this work. And you're seeing job seekers and people who are starting second careers, doing consulting, doing project works and things like that, they're talking about it. They're on forums because unfortunately, maybe they lost their job during the pandemic. Right, yeah. And now all of a sudden they're taking on more projects and they're talking about it. So I think when you see that the space opens up in a more broad way, it's been great.
Yeah, I have, and this is now I'm going down really to the weeds for personal, right? Because one of the things that I decided to do when COVID first hit was I saw a lot of people, they were holding themselves back, right? They were operating out of a scarcity model. And I was about to go down that path, let me just put the lid on things. Let me not, kind of expand. But I decided that this was my second year out as an entrepreneur. I was going to push into the space. I was going to do what I said I wanted to do. And that was in my second year, I wanted to hire somebody. I wanted to hire an admin to help me with, the things I just either A, don't like, or B, I just don't need to be doing, right? So somebody else has that skill set, and I was bringing them on to bring them on the team. And so I found that it was in pushing in that space, the opportunities opened up for me more because I was free to do some of those things. And so here's my question. What I discovered, and maybe this is what maybe I want to either verify or challenge, is that somebody that is, I really didn't go to New York or California to find that individual. I was kind of it was kind of word of mouth, but knowing what I know now, I don't know if I would have went to those markets because I know that there's talent in other markets that may not be as expensive as living in New York or in California, and I can find somebody that might be Midwest that is not going to, that's just as equally as talent, but not in that high level market. Is that like a strategy that you help or chat about or talk about at Indeed in your role?
Yeah, without a doubt. So it's geography, right?
Yeah.
And it's geography to the sense of what are you looking for, right? When I talk to a lot of companies that are looking to diversify their candidate funnel, they want to diversify the candidates that they have, they want to diversify their workforce.
Yes.
And having that opportunity, and it's about not just going to a New York, it's going to a Detroit, right? It's going to other areas that you can really focus in on. So you're 100% right. The New Yorks, the San Franciscos, those are the flashy environments, right? And we've seen high prices in those towns for a long time. But let's also keep in mind that all of a sudden people are working from home. Expenses change when you're not driving, you're not commuting. You've got your own overhead just at home. So it's a changing landscape. So you're 100% right. It is geography. And it's about being specific for what you're going after and what you're looking for.
Yeah, I have found that absolutely fascinating with that. So by now, I think probably after a year, we've almost been into this whole thing. There are probably some best practices for people to kind of get resumes in front of employers and jobs and the talent pool. What has been the kind of the coolest way you've seen like an applicant do that, or an employer who's looking for somebody kind of, do it from a standpoint like, this would be a great company to work for, so I'm going to do it a little bit different than the regular model?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. People are doing all kinds of things. I've seen creativity on a whole nother level. And I would say that one of the coolest things that I've seen, it's social media, right? And it is Instagram post where a company is highlighting or showcasing a job and asking for people to tag them in their online submissions. It's kind of a dual opportunity, right? It's an opportunity to interface with someone in a different way, but also let's not act like the company's not getting anything when it comes to
Absolutely, that's
marketing, right? So they're plugging themselves, they're putting it out there, they're getting people to come to them in kind of a different way, and I've seen it be successful. I've seen really cool opportunities come out of that. Now, is everybody gonna go out and post their jobs via Instagram? No, but it's unique, it's new, and it gives people to show off a different side other than just a resume. I'm one who I completely understand. It's hard to get your resume in front of the right people sometimes, right? So when I see alternate ideas and things like that, I think it's terrific.
That's brilliant. I was just like, right. I take notes all the time so I can just make sure I'm responding back to what like you've been saying. So if you're enjoying this conversation with Dane Browner of Indeed, wow, just put in the chat box, put him out there, put in something that you have heard from him say that was just off the charts. Great. I'm actually looking over here just to make sure things were going out because I see it going out on my LinkedIn feed. So that's the least happening. So hopefully it's going out on YouTube and on Facebook. So kind of shifting gears, I want to kind of go back a little bit. You're so great in this space, and you have such a passion behind it. And a lot of times people don't marry their passion with what they're really good at. What was it and remains about it that attracted you to the space of recruiting?
Yeah, well, thank you for the high compliment. I take that as a compliment because it's something that you continue to work at, right? And I think that part of being good at something is continuing to work towards getting better at it each and every day. But I would say that my original passion was just people. Even in school, my passion was people. I started off my career in recruiting, working at a staffing agency, and all I knew was there's people out there. So you fast forward to what I do today when it comes to working with hiring managers on inclusive hiring, on talking to external companies and being a consultant for them when it comes to like how they go about their interview process. How do they diversify their candidate funnel? I get excited about it because I've been in this industry for over 10 years. I still hear from people that I worked with my first year about the jobs that I put them in.
Wow.
And, the other thing is I can work in this industry because I'm passionate about it and it's something I believe in. It's also something that I think that so many people can connect with because unfortunately, there are not many of us that were born independently wealthy and we can just do whatever we want, right? We have jobs, we have a spouse that has a job, we have family members that have jobs. So when it comes to helping people get jobs, when it comes to helping people better themselves, get a better job, get better opportunities, I can continue to do what I do each and every day because it means something to me, right? And I see the change. I see what happens. It's not something that happens later on down the road or anything like that. So it's still exciting. It's got its frustrating days just like any other job, but I love it all the same.
Yeah. You said a couple things in there, and I wrote down to explore. One is really around first thing is around echoes. And you said that, you'll hear from people 10 years ago who said, thanks, Dane, for putting me in this job. I mean, I can't believe this is like my dream and you're moving forward. I call those echo moments, right? Because ripples go out from us, but echoes come back and people will share that, or they'll share with somebody else. And then that comes back to you a different way. But in this process, right, there is this we talk about hiring, kind of this diversity divide that happens. So we talk about DE&I, belonging and inclusion, and some of the other things around that. I thought that, especially if I take it like into people with disabilities. So there's all these opportunities that have opened up, all this technology has opened up. And when you look at the American with Disabilities Act, since 30 years old, since 1990, when George H.W. Bush signs it into law, we see that there are curb cutouts now. We see that there are access open opportunities. We see there's supposed to be on par for tech, but oftentimes in the job market area, the number hasn't even moved at all. So kind of help me understand, kind of your thought process around a person who might do well working from home pre-COVID, that comes into a job interview and says, you don't have to accommodate for me. I can just work from home. And the employer says, nah, we want you in here. What's part of the team? And now we're all working from home. And and that person's like, well, hey, I told you I could do this job from home and I still can't get the opportunity. How do we kind of help fix that problem around people with disabilities in the workplace?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, I think that it starts with education, right? And when we talk about our executives and what are we doing? What are we doing to understand the work that needs to get done? And one of the things that I had a great opportunity to chat with some executives about recently was about why jobs need to be in the office, right? And it was funny, we start the conversation and you saw a couple of eyes roll. But then when we started talking about cost and we started talking about decreasing office space, all of a sudden you saw faces start to light up a little bit. And they're like, wait a minute, we might be onto something here. We started talking about overhead costs. Mm-hmm. So, I think that the conversation is twofold. So it starts on that side and making sure that we understand what that means and what we need when it comes to being in the office. And then on the other side, I think that as candidates, we have to make sure that we're celebrating our own abilities, right? And how skilled we are at this work. So showcasing the work that you're able to do and the skills that you've garnered is huge. Because at the end of the day, regardless of what employers say on the outside, what they want to know is they want to know that you can get the job done. They want to see that you can get the job done. So I think that 9 out of 10 people that I talk to don't advocate for themselves enough. They don't brag on themselves enough. They don't talk about the work that they do and the amazing things that they do. You think about resumes. A lot of times resumes, we don't love writing resumes. Resumes sometimes are just job descriptions and things that are in a piece of the job that are then put on a resume. Yeah, but what did you do? Not what is the responsibilities of the job. What did you actually do? And once you start highlighting that and the things that you do, I think that becomes huge. It becomes huge for association. It becomes huge for community. And I mean, the word community it's a big one in itself. Being a part of a community, that word of mouth, those ripples, that stuff is huge. That's why one of the very first candidates I ever advocated for, and I went to my hiring manager and I said, you have to hire this guy. He called me up. And this isn't no exaggeration. It had been 8 years since I put him in that job. And he said, Dane, I wanted to let you know I'm putting in my resignation this afternoon. And I said, oh, that's great. You got something else? And he said, yeah, I've got a great new job lined up, but I wanted you to know I really appreciated you putting me in this job. And I felt like you should be one of the first to know that I was resigning. Like, I was flabbergasted that I was even a thought on his list 8 years later, that it was that important to him, right? So I say all that to say, you have to advocate for yourself in the work that you do to move forward.
Yeah, I agree, and that we have to advocate for ourselves. There's something I'll say in my presentations that also I think is also consideration, and that is sometimes people will forecast onto others what they believe is possible for that individual based upon what they believe they could do if they were in that person's situation. And so a person that might come up into an office space, say, for example, kind of pre-COVID, that's rolling up a wheelchair or who may be blind, the recruiter then says, well, I couldn't do this job if I were blind, if I was in a chair. So therefore, I think there's going to be too much for me. The cost is going to be too much. I've got to do too many accommodations. So I begin to pass on the individual instead of bringing them in. Because there's got to be, because what generally happens with people with disabilities is they're smart, they're sharp, they're doctors, they are PhDs, master's degrees, and they still can't get the nod to get in over some other people that might just have a bachelor's, for example, and they're doing the work and they're out there. So they sometimes either hang out in school or they become entrepreneurs, and so all that talent is walked away from your organization, and now you got a competitor that's out there who's that you could have brought on board and onto your team. And I think that gets kind of into some of the reasons why we have some of these kind of laws in the books, so that we can look at a person who might be different from the norm or from the majority, to have access to some of the jobs that are there. Instead of, when I walk into certain establishments, I see a certain specific kind of category grouping of people that always seem to get hired into those jobs, but never into the managerial or the supervisor level. They're always kind of the ones that are looking for the step up into it. But when the supervisor job comes, it never really is that person. Walk us through how, what it might mean, or how that happens, so we can begin to look at the talent, like you're saying, of everybody kind of equally and move them up. Kind of have the blinders on, just look at the talent for talent's sake.
Yeah, you brought up some great things, and one of the things that I'll say is, let's not be confused. Laws don't prevent biases.
That's right.
Just because it's illegal doesn't mean that people aren't creating their own judgments.
Right.
I had the opportunity to speak at some conferences recently. Disability In last summer, I actually got to sit down and talk to a number of attendees from the conference afterwards, and it was crazy. One of the things that I heard was, a global pandemic was one of the best things that happened for me. And I was like, well, what do you mean? Well, now everybody's on Zoom. So me being on Zoom, me being on any sort of video platform, nobody notices that I'm in a wheelchair now.
Right.
I'm just at home in my own space. And so my work got to speak for me, right? So I would say that as employers, we have to take a look at our skills, right? What are the skills that we need for this job, and make sure that we're assessing on skills.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that we always do that. And I think that that's one of the things that I get the chance to talk to interviewers a lot about. It's how are you actually coming to hiring decisions, right? Are you using an interview rubric? Are you using consistent questions and things like that? Like, what's that scoring guide look like so that you can accurately articulate what you're looking for? And sometimes we don't know, right? Just because we haven't really thought about it. Or what's this person supposed to do in this role? All right. That's what we actually want to interview against. So what I would say is, when we think about it from an employer side, we have to spend time understanding what it is that we need in a role, and then go find candidates that meet those needs. And what that means is we're not just backfilling Sue, who left for another job, right? We're hiring for this position. What does this position entail? Not what did Sue bring to the table?
Yeah, that's a really great answer. I wish you're exactly right, and there's no way you can legislate somebody's way of hiring somebody, whatever it could be, right? So you just can't legislate behavior. We were talking a little bit earlier, or around these systems that we want to put in place, and we see some good intentions in areas. And then there's some, okay, we got this good intention that's happening, but then another system comes up to kind of thwart that system, right? So I'm being very specific now with the Rooney Rule that has just come up, right? So one of the things about the Rooney Rule, I'll get you to explain the Rooney Rule, but how can this Rooney Rule that happened in the NFL, should it be used in a corporate American environment? And I'll have you explain it, for those that may not be familiar with it out in our audience.
Sure. So let's start with the Rooney Rule itself. The Rooney Rule itself was put into place in the NFL, and it was to essentially say that we wanted to hire more minority head coaches. Mm-hmm. And so they put in a rule to say that you have to interview X amount of minority candidates before you can make a decision, right? So fast forward to today, and you'll see a lot of iterations of it in many tech companies, in a lot of different ways. Your big name companies, they use it in different ways. And typically how it's used is to, quote unquote, diversify candidate funnels. So you can't move forward with a hire unless you have at least 10% of the candidates from underrepresented groups. And that's how you'll see it put into place a lot of times. So to answer the question, is it effective? Should we put it in? Yes and no. It can be effective. It is a tool of diversifying the candidate funnel, but it's not the only way, and it's not necessarily the right way for every company. And what I mean by that is just hitting numbers doesn't change anything. Right. Yep. So we can't just say, all right, well, you have to interview at least 5 people, and at least one of them has to be come from an underrepresented group. Right. Okay, well, we've got this candidate from an underrepresented group that we've identified, and we're not moving forward with them for this role. Next thing you know, this same candidate is quote unquote interviewing for every role at the company because they're checking the box, right? And if you're using something like the Rooney Rule to just check a box, then all you're really looking at is optics, right? You're not actually changing the narrative. So then my question would be, why are you looking to put in the Rooney Rule? If it's about optics, sure, right? Put it in. Like, let's call a spade here, right? There are plenty of times that companies do things for optics. It is what it is, right? But if you're really looking to make a change, the Rooney Rule by itself isn't going to do that. That's not going to do that. So what I would say is, outside of just the Rooney Rule, how are you actually getting your candidates? what does your candidate flow look like? How are you actually diversifying the candidate funnel? Like, what are those sources? Let's look at diverse sources and let's increase representation, not just let's check a box.
Yeah. Yeah. So the interesting thing, as I'm looking at this and kind of the stuff that's going on right now, it's like the check the box. People do that a lot, So I get hired because some people just want to check a box, right? And that's just a kind of the fact of what something might be. So in 2002, you have the firings of Coach Tony Dungy. You have the firing of Coach Dennis Green, both winning records, Super Bowl champion coach. But it's often kind of goes back to last hired, first fired when it comes to minorities, and they don't get the shot. So the rules put in place, as you said, to ensure that coaches get the shot for these head hiring positions. But then the league owners change the tune a little bit of the game and begin shifting the talent pipeline from coaches to offensive coordinators. And of course, in offensive coordinators, there's not a lot of people of color that are doing that in there. So because they've now shifted, it's not the coaching staff anymore. We're just going to shift it to offensive coordinators. So walk us through what that might look like for a company that is shifting. They're in the quote unquote Rooney Rule here, but now we really want these other folks in here. So we're going to shift the model over a little bit so we can be more aligned with. We just don't have enough applicants in the pipeline to really choose from.
Yeah, I think where I see it most often is when you'll have a company that is looking at their senior level positions, right? And then their senior level positions, they don't look very diverse, right? So optically, all right, well, we're going to use the Rooney Rule and we're going to hire. And then all of a sudden there's this new C-level position that's newly created, and all of a sudden they've just added diversity, right?
Yeah.
Optics, right? That's exactly what we were talking about before. But where that shift is actually hitting those lower level positions, those middle management positions, and seeing that change. So when we actually look at those frontline managers,
mm-hmm.
how many managers do we have from these groups? That's where our change is. And then let's talk about how we're going to develop them and keep them. So now we're not just talking about a recruiting strategy, we're talking about a retention and development strategy. Sure. So let's diversify our candidate funnel. Let's get in good talent. Now let's figure out how to develop and keep them and then move them up the ladder, because you can't just have it at the top from some optic position that you made, and you can't just have it on new college grads because it's easy to get new college grads, right? So you have to approach it from all sides if you really want to be effective, if you really want to make that change. And that's not easy to do, and it takes time. And that's not a goal that you can just say set out for tomorrow. And I think that's what you have to be real about, right? So when you're approaching a topic like this, to say, all right, well, we're going to go out and we're going to make our next 5 hires, they're all going to be diversity hires, right? We're going to hire diversity candidates. I'm going to look at you and say, awesome, but no, you're wrong, right? They're just candidates. Every candidate's diverse, right? They're diverse from one another because culturally, experiences, their backgrounds, right? This candidate may have gone to grandmother's house every summer. This candidate traveled the world. Yeah. Culturally, they're completely different, right? So we have to look at things in a different lens, and it's a mindset shift, and it's not easy, right? And it's not just diversity of things that we see, right, and what we think we see, because you can mistakenly identify someone any day of the week, but it's other things. It's diversity of thought. It's actually moving forward and creating a truly inclusive environment, not just something that is optically pleasing.
Do you think there should be, that's a great answer. You think there should be some type of incentive for, here's why I'm going down this. I know the NFL did something to put some incentives in place. At the same time, when I look at, hiring kind of in like corporate America, for example, with the talent pool that's there, a lot of HR professionals will say, well, we just can't find the talent. To which I generally reply, and I've heard other people say, well, then your HR department is not talented enough to go find the talent. So that's kind of that. But if you do agree with like an incentive of developing this pipeline, where does it live inside of an organization? And maybe kind of some strategies on why that would be of benefit.
Yeah, incentives are interesting, right? One of the things, if you've ever gotten a chance to catch up with me one-on-one, you'll hear me say is hiring a white male is not a fail, right? We can't move into a culture to say, you hired a white male into that role. That's wrong, right? That's not the degree that we're looking to go. I also would never want to be hired because I'm Black.
Right.
Hire me because I was the most qualified candidate in the room.
Right.
So, to get to your question there about incentivizing, I think that you have to be careful with how you're incentivizing and what it is that you're incentivizing, because I think that you can do it wrong a lot more than you can do it right. So if you want to say double the incentive for bringing in a candidate from an underrepresented group, right? Are you really asking your employees to go visually identify a bunch of people and bring them in? I don't know that that's necessarily the answer all the time. So when it comes to strategy, I think it goes back to, let's talk about sources, right? And so let's incentivize how we're sourcing, how we're going about and getting candidates. So let's put our money where our mouth is, and let's support conferences like Disability In, like Afrotech, like Grace Hopper, like these conferences that are specific to groups. Let's look at incentivizing in some different ways. So let's put money into maybe our resource groups, whether it's if you have a resource group at your company, like a Black inclusion group. Let's incentivize the Black inclusion group to go out into the community and go do things in a different way. And let's change the narrative. And let's not just try and pay people to come hang out with us because they're going to optically change things for us. And I'm going to keep going back to optics, because last year, in the midst of a global pandemic, we had the Black Lives Matter movement, right? And optically, companies decided they needed to change.
Right.
But it was just optically. So I'm going to continue to go back to it, because it can't just be optics. We've got to talk about fundamental changes, and we've got to talk about things that are hard, right? We do have to talk about HR departments that have to really work to make changes. And you know what? That might mean that companies are going to have to put some money into advanced sourcing, advanced certificates for our HR professionals too, to go and sit down and do a Cornell University certificate program in D&I, right? They may need to come and spend some time with John Register and get a couple of days of training, right? But there's things that we've got to do to advance that conversation more than just throwing money at things. Throwing money at problems is things that got us in trouble a long time ago and continue to get us in trouble. So let's actually make a change.
Yeah, I love that's a great answer. I'm not a fan of incentives like that to fill just so we can check the box. Definitely a fan of putting it where it makes impact. So exactly what you said, where can we invest in some ways we haven't done so before and incentivize that process and systems versus like onto an individual for like a candidate. So I'm with you on that piece as well. We'd love to hear some other comments that are out there on what you might think as well. So there was a great, I was glued when I saw the Super Bowl commercial for Indeed. It was a powerful commercial. What were some of your thoughts and kind of how, I think it was your first time as a company that was on the Super Bowl for that ad buy. What was it that you were trying to convey in that message?
Yeah, it was our first Super Bowl ad, and we spent a lot of time in our marketing department deciding where are we trying to go with this? What do we want to convey? And I think when it all came down to it, it was looking at different people, and we wanted people to be able to see themselves in different walks of life. It was the person who just needs a job, any job, because they need a source of income. They've got other mouths to feed, to that person who has a job, has a good job, but maybe wants a better job, right? Or is trying to advance themselves, and tie all that back to having something that you can be meaningful about, and you can feel accomplished, right? The song "We'll Rise Up," it, like, I don't know, it really got to me. And the first time I saw the first proof of it, long before it ever got all its fancy edits and things like that, it was just like, I felt it, right? And I think that the whole purpose was, you got to feel something. We wanted you to feel something and understand that we hear you and we want to make it better. Indeed, our mission is that we help people get jobs, right? We talk about always keeping the job seeker first. So we continue to do that. We always want to figure out, how do we get job seekers connected to employers faster? How do we get employers to top talent faster? Let's get more people, more jobs, and then let's do it all over again. So we really just wanted to bottle that up together. You couple that with giving an amazing young talent a huge stage where he could showcase it. Got to see some great footage of he and his family as well. And Christian's an amazing guy, and it was great, right? It was great for our first commercial, but I loved where we're going with it.
Absolutely, yeah. Because I was like, okay, that was like, you guys in my book were like right there with Michael B. Jordan, the Alexa one.
Yeah,
that was hilarious. But like on the other, it was like right there. Those are my two favorite commercials I had during the Super Bowl.
Appreciate that.
Absolutely. So help me. I started off earlier talking a little bit about what I did during the push. Right during this, I was going to push in 2020 instead of just kind of bottling up and retreating. And I went out and got 1099, not employee, what's it, 1099 consultant, right? Does Indeed help with that too, or is it just the employee side of the W-9 employer?
We don't explicitly do it, but when we post jobs, we post all jobs, right? And we give everybody the opportunity. So when you look at Indeed.com, there's project work that's on there. Sometimes there's different kinds of jobs that are on there. Mm-hmm. So yes, we're trying to put everything on there. It doesn't matter what the job is. We want all jobs on there as long as they're legitimate jobs. And we're going to continue to work. Our search quality team is going to continue to work to verify jobs or real jobs and get any of those fake things or pyramid scheme things and get those off.
Right. Yeah. No, I need some help. So always looking for some great talent. So want to get this before we get to the top of the hour. I know we're getting short in time, but thanks. This has been great. And I have no idea why folks are not on this thing. There must be a setting or something that's wrong, but we'll chop it up and we'll get it back out. It always, the replay is always the better part anyway. So I got these JR's Inspire 5 rapid flash round questions for you. Just kind of play real quick. And we're talking to Dane Browner over at Indeed, the global kumbaya guy. Wow.
Yeah, let's do it.
So, okay, here's question number 1. Plane or train?
Oh, plane.
Okay.
Get me there.
Get you there. Sit-ups or push-ups?
Sit-ups.
Really? Okay.
Yes.
Last book you read?
Last book I read, Fight, Grind, Repeat. With
Grind, Repeat.
Yep, Bobby Bones.
All right. Best advice you were given?
Best advice I was ever given. Oh, that's a tough one. I'm gonna say be you. They'll adjust. They'll adjust?
Be you, they'll adjust?
You got it.
All right. Sit-ups. Okay, somebody's on. So Anita's on. We got that. See, I see it's all. Nita, thank you for telling. I know you're out there. I can smell it. So sit-ups, absolutely. I don't know. I hate sit-ups. So I don't know. So last one is, who do you know who you would love to hear on the show?
Who do I know that I would love to hear on this show? You're putting me on the spot here. I got all kinds of names that are coming.
Yes.
What's that?
I'll try to get my next guest.
You know it. I'm thinking of a local contact who does some pretty good work in both the recruiting space, but also the music industry. Good friend of mine. His name's Darian, who he's got an entrepreneur mindset, but he's doing some cool things.
Oh, I love that. Okay. Let's make it happen. All right. So those are the questions I had. If you have some for me, you can do it right now. And I'll answer the 5 and go back. Dennis Ogby. Hey, what's up, Dennis? Dennis says supported sit-ups.
There it is. I loved your question on best advice. It's probably one that's going to keep me up all night tonight, if I'm honest. But I'd love to hear what you think. What's the best advice that maybe you would have? It's
really similar to yours. But I'll say one. So I'll it's very similar to what you said. However, I will go a different direction just so we have some things. The best advice I was given was stay the day. Stay the day. And what that means is whenever you travel someplace, whenever you go someplace that is, I don't care if it's domestic or international, make time to stay an extra day. Because a lot of times we get in and we get out with work and we don't appreciate, especially as athletes. We go out, we do an event, we do something, and we just get on the plane and go back. And so when I took that to heart, and when I was doing a little bit of, I don't coach basketball, but my son plays basketball, so like one of their conditioning coaches. I made him do a lot of sit-ups. And whenever we traveled on an AAU trip, we always found a museum to go to. We looked at the history of the town that we were playing in, and we took the kids on a half-day trip, right, in between basketball games or something. So it's always was kind of stay the day. Yep.
I love that. No, I think that's important. I learned that early on in my career. One of the first work trips I ever went on, somebody else was dying. I was so excited. They said, "We're taking you to New Orleans." I was like, "I've never been to New Orleans. This sounds great." Same day, in and out.
Right.
And I was like, I blew it. I missed it. And I came home and I was like, why didn't I just pay to stay the extra night myself? Right. It didn't even matter. I was young in my career. And I learned that right then. And it was stay the day. Right. And it was an awesome opportunity. I've since been back to New Orleans a few times and it's a great city. But I love that.
Yeah. Mick Workman, he told me he passed away not too long after he told me that. And I was a trip. I was doing a training session when I was cutting my teeth doing training for the military, and I was in Belgium doing the training. And after the training was over, I took one of the young soldiers with me, and we just zipped over into Paris. We just went around real quick, got back out of there, and then took the plane the next day home. And I was telling Mick about the trip, and he just chewed me out. He said, "Why would you take a soldier over all that way who hasn't probably traveled like you have traveled and just do a drive-by over Paris? Stay the extra days. Just there's no need to come back. The work's going to be here."
Yeah.
Right.
It's crazy how we forget and we can so quickly take that stuff for granted or those opportunities for granted. Even those trips that you do regularly.
Right.
No, I love that.
Yeah. So that's the best advice, I think, and I do it now all the time. So so look, we've been talking with Dane Browner. I don't know why you guys are coming on like at 5 because you should have been here the whole time. Maybe you were. I don't know if you were or not. So Connie says, "I like that. I love that." Okay, thanks, Connie. I appreciate that. Kind of light along there. Dennis says she's supporting the sit-ups, and so appreciate that. All you got to push this out because you got to watch the replay. I want to cut it up. It's fantastic. Dane was just absolutely great. So if you are hiring and you need to get hired, get out there on Indeed. Call Dane right now at 555-555-5555.
My phone just started blowing up right off the bat. I don't even know how that happened so fast.
No, really go out to Indeed's website, get moving on it because it's a phenomenal, great new concept that's out there in the marketplace and really does work. I've heard a lot of great people getting hired on the platform. What's been your most memorable hire that you can think about?
My most memorable hire, it would probably be, it's one of my first hires at Indeed, and it was an engineering manager. And it's it's probably one of the most memorable because I watched him go through the process. We had a great conversation. I got the opportunity to chat with his wife as well as we were nearing the end of the process, and we really connected, right? And he said after he got hired, he said, what did it for me was you took the time, right? You took the time to understand, and it wasn't just here are the numbers, get them, sign them, don't sign them, I don't care, right? And so I would say it's one of my most memorable because he came to me to really talk about the process and how much it meant to him. But then he came and he joined the organization and we stayed tight, right? To this day, he's one of our engineering hiring managers, and I'm reaching out to him, talking about things that are going on in the process that need to get fixed. He's flagging things that are not going well. And we really built a connection. So I'd say it's one of the most memorable because he came through Indeed Resume. He had his resume posted on Indeed Resume. And I saw it on there, contacted him and walked him through the process. So it's one of the most memorable because it was an Indeed story through and through, and it continues to be today.
Wow, that's great. Thank you for being on today. I really do appreciate your time. Praying for you down there. I know you got rolling blackouts happening. We got snow here, but it's nothing like what's happening down in your neck of the woods of America. But stay on for just a few seconds. I want to close the show out if you got time to stick around.
Yeah.
Everybody get on there. Any closing parting shots you want to give to the audience? Oh, just got a quick question.
Yeah.
How many people with disabilities have you hired? See, then if you would have been on earlier, you would have kind of heard some of the, well, we weren't talking about how many people you hired, but we did talk around people with disabilities.
Dennis, it's a great question. And I am happy to say that I don't know, right? And I say I'm happy to say that because I've had the opportunity to see hires go through as a recruiter myself and as a recruiting manager, and they were just candidates. So that's not to disqualify any of my candidates, but what I mean by that is they were all just candidates that I was looking at in the same pool. But what I did focus on and what I continue to focus on and push our recruiters to do is to look at diverse sources, right? So where are we going out? Where are we getting top talent? Who are our partners where we can work with? I keep shouting them out because I love the organization. Disability In, right? I got the opportunity to speak with them. We get the opportunity to regularly partner with them. But using that as a source of candidates and getting them into the funnel and making sure that that's the focus. And I'm happy that I can't give you a quick number because number one, I know it wouldn't be high enough. Number two, if I could quantify it for you, I don't want to get into just answering for optics sakes, right? I want to make sure that people are getting hired on their own merit. And we didn't just go, all right, you know what? We haven't hired anybody with disabilities recently. So flag the next software engineering spot for someone with disabilities, right? Never an organization that I would want to be a part of if they did something like that. So I'm happy to say that we work with a lot of really good partners and get a lot of really good talent that some of them do have disabilities, but that's not ever our focal point.
That's a great answer, Dennis. I'll chop that up and I'll put that in the question and answer so you can actually hear a little bit more further on what Dane said a little bit early in the show. And the second kind of piece around that is when you're in the workplace anyway, we don't even know who's in our own workspace that's already hired that does have a disability that hasn't self-disclosed. And then the big shout out for Disability In, Jill Houghton and crew. So they are doing great, phenomenal work. They're measuring themselves against the DEI, the Disability Equality Index. And so a lot of things, we probably have to do a whole show on that, on the Disability Equality Index on that one. So Dane, thank you for being with us. Really appreciate it. Dennis says, thanks. No worries, preach your honesty. Thank you both for this presentation. You're so welcome, Dennis. And hey, man, I'm running dry. You know what that means, right? I'm running dry. You got to send some stuff back over to me. So Dennis is a Paralympic athlete, and he's down there, and I can't remember where I think he's in the Tennessee area. But thank you, Dane, for being on. Stick around for a second. We're going to close the show up. Everybody, wow, what a fantastic show. We've had some comments on here, so I'm so glad that somebody was actually out there listening, because we had some really great, interesting conversation around a lot of different topics. We'll run that back. You have to listen to it again and again, because it's really gonna help you in this space. So, big announcement. Remember, I want you to hear from all of you, because we're gonna do a deep dive live. So I want to know what it is that you may want to glean from as we talk about this journey from fear to freedom. So we're going to be talking about that next week. If you're beginning to think about summer and summer grilling, then you need to be at this show, because we're going to see the best sauce on the market. We will be talking to U.S. Air Force veteran turned entrepreneur, the owner of Mutt Sauce, Charlinda Scales. So this is going to be a fantastic conversation. So she was on Shark Tank and all that stuff. It's going to be a great conversation. So remember, finally, you are the inspirations. Inspirations are the catalyst of motivation. Motivation in turn causes actions. Actions then lead us to transformational results. And those results, they re-inspire us or allow somebody else that's watching the process to catch the vision. So we say, go forth and inspire your world, because go is your command. Forth is your direction. Inspire is your vocation. Because this mission belongs to you and you alone. World, this is your sphere of influence. So see you back here next week at 3:12 in the afternoon Mountain Time on Hurdlers of Adversity, conversations with inspirers and maximizers of pivotal moments. God bless everybody. We'll see you next week. Bye for now.